coastal residents in the Western and Eastern Cape have been urged to be on high alert as storm surges caused high tides yesterday. Buildings were flooded while cars were swept away, and officials fear more spring tides could be on the way. For more on this unusual, or is it a usual phenomenon, we're joined this morning by Lehlohonolo Thobela, who is a forecaster with the SA Weather Service. Lehlohonolo, it's great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for coming on. Is this unseasonal?
Good morning, and thanks for having me. Well, I wouldn't say unseasonal. We have tides every day per area. Just depends on how it is influenced by spring tide. The spring tide is seasonal, yes, as it comes after a full moon or a new moon. And when the moon, sun and the earth starts to align, that's when we start having such conditions. So you can imagine when we have a spring tide aligning with tides, high tides that usually happen in an area, then it increases the amplitude of the highs and the sea waves that we usually have. Then it increases the amount of water that ends up resulting in flooding, or obviously then seeing what has happened in observations in the past days, actually yesterday to be specific, seeing the waters that then gushed over most of the areas in the Western and the Eastern Cape. Yeah, I mean, we're showing our viewers some shocking footage in, I think it's an area in the Western Cape, where you can see seawater essentially going over into the road. There's a residential area that's right on the coastline, but the seawater goes right into the road and even up the road. You can see people sort of to the right of the screen. They're running up the road trying to get away. Have you seen this kind of weather before? Yes, there has been. I mean, we also issued a warning, a number of warnings around the coastal areas. One for damaging winds and waves, which might result in the conditions that you've spoken about now. We also issued a level 4 warning for storm surge in places along the coast, which was between Still Bay and Fish River, which would result in the conditions that you've seen yesterday. So what had happened is that we have usually every area in the coastal area has high tides, which then a tide is mainly the seawater going up and down, but with the combination of the earth, the moon and the sun being in alignment in more energy, high energy content in the oceans, then resulted in the conditions that we've seen yesterday. But however, as you stated, it was a spring tide, and it happened just shortly after we've had a full moon. I think just end of August, closer to the beginning of spring. That's when we've had this. But usually, if it for it to be considered a storm surge, it's when then it has a low pressure system associated with the storm, which then results in this. In this condition, a cold front had moved past 2 days ago, which then had a low pressure system, but it was further east, where then we had a surface system called the high pressure that pushed in, which was really pushing in, caused a high number of strong winds, which then resulted in also some high energy in terms of the waves of the water that was along the west coast and south coast, spreading over to the east coast, which then resulted in some areas of the Eastern Cape province having such much of the damage as we've seen yesterday. Yeah. I mean, what's worrying for me is we've seen so many videos coming out over the past 24 hours of people standing really close to the ocean. I mean, thankfully, there have been no reports of injuries. But, you know, at least it doesn't appear that everyone is taking these warnings as seriously as perhaps they need to be taken. What would be your message? I mean, we obviously would misjudge just the force of that amount of water coming over into the road there. What's your advice to people who live along the coast and the kind of the behavior they should be displaying to keep them and their families safe? I think the first thing is people shouldn't wait for such things to happen for them to consider warnings that are issued. We understand that sometimes you have issues of saying they didn't get communications or something, but if you are to go to the beach, make sure that communication and follow up in terms of warnings and what's expected for the area. Check the weather. We have the weather service having www.weathersa.co.za. We are also on social media, on Instagram, Twitter, as well as Facebook. We share every day our warnings and weather charts. So I think the basis of everything first is to find out the weather in terms of if you are to engage in any either could be shipping or social activities at the beach. The main thing to do is to keep alert and watch the news and keep on the radio stations make sure that you got your communication right in terms of weather-related alerts, especially if you're going to go have fun at the beach.
Yeah, yeah. And it really isn't worth that photograph that you're trying to get as the storm comes in, right? Your safety.
That's true.
Yeah, let me thank you for your time this morning. Lehlohonolo Thobela is a forecaster with the SA Weather Service. Thankfully, as we said, no injuries reported, but advice there really to keep a watch on the advisories coming in from places like the NSRI, from the Weather Service as well, and to keep safe and far away.